My name is Vex 291, and I'm what you'd call a maintenance drone on orbital station Kepler 7. Yeah, I know. Glamorous life, right? Cleaning plasma conduits and fixing busted air recyclers while the big shots in their fancy uniforms strut around pretending they run the universe. But hey, someone's got to keep the lights on while these bureaucrats debate which end of a plasma torch gets hot. It was cycle 847 of the galactic standard year when everything went sideways. I was elbow deep in a malfunctioning food synthesizer, cursing in 3 different languages, because whoever designed this piece of junk clearly had their head shoved so far up their posterior that they could see their own breakfast. The thing was sparking like a dying star, and the smell, let's just say it reminded me of that time I accidentally opened an airlock to the waste disposal bay. That's when I heard it. A soft thud from the corridor outside, followed by what sounded like someone trying very hard not to scream. Now, normally I'd mind my own business. Rule number 1 of being a maintenance worker: see nothing, hear nothing, fix everything. But there was something about that sound that made my 4 stomachs twist into knots. I poked my head out of the service hatch, and there she was, a human female, slumped against the wall like a broken marionette. Blood was seeping through her torn clothing, which looked expensive even in its current shredded state. Her hair was matted with sweat and, was that plasma residue? Her skin had that pale, clammy look that screamed I'm about to pass out and possibly die. Now, here's the thing about humans. Most of us in the Galactic Federation think they're cute little primitives who somehow stumbled into space travel. Sure, they're resourceful. I'll give them that. But they're also fragile, emotional, and have this annoying habit of throwing themselves into situations that would make a Regilian battle worm think twice. This one looked like she'd gone 10 rounds with a plasma cannon and lost spectacularly. "Hey," I called out, using my universal translator. "You okay there, tiny mammal?" She looked up at me with eyes that were, well, let me tell you something about human eyes. Most species have eyes that serve one purpose: seeing stuff. But human eyes? They're like little windows into their souls, if you believe in that mystical nonsense. Hers were green, the color of Earth's ancient forests that I'd seen in the databases. Right now they were filled with pain, determination, and something else, something that made my secondary brain start sending warning signals to my primary one. "I'm fine," she said, which was obviously a lie bigger than the Andromeda Galaxy. She tried to stand up and immediately collapsed again. Just need a moment. "Right, and I'm the Emperor of Zeta Reticuli," I muttered, abandoning my post to approach her. "Lady, you're bleeding all over my nice, clean corridor. Do you have any idea how hard it is to get human blood out of durasteel plating?" She actually laughed at that. Laughed. Here she was, probably dying, and she found my complaint amusing. Humans are weird. "Sorry about the mess," she said, pressing a hand to what looked like a nasty gash on her side. "I don't suppose you have a med kit handy?" I stared at her for a moment. My shift supervisor, Clax 98, had made it very clear that fraternizing with station personnel was strictly forbidden. Yes, and helping random bleeding humans definitely fell under the category of fraternization. But then again, Clax 98 was also the kind of supervisor who'd probably sell his own egg sack for a promotion, so his opinion didn't carry much weight with me. "Stay here," I told her, which was stupid advice considering she could barely move. "I'll be right back." I scuttled back into the service tunnels, my 6 legs carrying me quickly to the emergency supply cache. Every maintenance worker knows where these are hidden, though we're not supposed to access them except in case of station-wide emergencies. But hey, a dying human seemed pretty emergency-like to me. The med kit was standard issue: biofoam, pain inhibitors, universal antibiotics, and a tissue regenerator that looked like it had seen better decades. I grabbed the whole thing and made my way back to her, half expecting to find her unconscious or worse. Instead, I found her trying to patch herself up with what looked like part of her torn sleeve. The determination on her face was actually impressive, in a stupid but admirable kind of way. Here, I said, setting the med kit down beside her. This might sting a bit. Can't be worse than getting shot by plasma rifles, she replied casually, as if getting shot by plasma rifles was something that happened to her every Tuesday. As I started cleaning her wounds, I couldn't help but notice a few things. First, she had more scars than a veteran Space Marine. Second, she wasn't panicking or going into shock like most species would after losing that much blood. And third, there was something about the way she held herself, even injured, that suggested she was used to being in command. So, I said, applying biofoam to the worst of her injuries, want to tell me how you ended up looking like you went swimming in a plasma storm? She was quiet for a moment, watching me work with those unsettling green eyes. Wrong place, wrong time, she finally said. Story of my life, really. Must be quite a story, I commented, activating the tissue regenerator. The device hummed to life, its healing beam slowly knitting her torn flesh back together. Most people don't end up this shot up from being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Most people aren't me. There was something in the way she said it. Not arrogance, exactly, but a quiet confidence that suggested she knew exactly who she was and what she was capable of. It made my tertiary brain start asking questions that my primary brain didn't want to hear. "What's your name?" I asked, more to distract myself than out of genuine curiosity. "Maya," she said after a pause. "Maya Torres." The name didn't ring any bells, which wasn't surprising. Humans all had these weird, short names that sounded alike to most non-human ears. Torres could have been anyone from a cargo handler to a diplomat's assistant. "Well, Maya Torres," I said, finishing up with the regenerator. "You're lucky I found you when I did. Another hour, and you'd have been decorating my corridor in a very permanent way." She flexed her arm experimentally, testing the newly healed tissue. "Thank you," she said, and there was genuine gratitude in her voice. "I mean it. You didn't have to help me." "Yeah, well, don't spread it around," I grumbled, packing up the med kit. "I've got a reputation to maintain. Can't have word getting out that I'm going soft on bleeding mammals." That earned me another laugh, which did strange things to my primary nervous system. Humans had this way of expressing amusement that was infectious, I suppose. It made you want to keep making them do it. "Your secret's safe with me," she said, struggling to her feet. This time, she managed to stay upright, though she swayed slightly. "I should probably get going." "Going where?" I asked, suddenly realizing that I had no idea what she'd been doing in this section of the station in the first place. "This is maintenance level 7. Nothing down here but service tunnels and storage compartments." Her expression shifted slightly, becoming more guarded. "I was looking for someone. Someone who likes hanging out with plasma conduits and air scrubbers. Someone who values privacy," she said carefully. That's when the alarm started blaring. The corridor filled with that horrible shrieking sound that meant someone very important was very unhappy about something. Emergency lights began flashing, casting everything in hellish red shadows. And somewhere in the distance, I could hear the distinctive stomp of security boots moving fast. Maya's face went pale, which, considering how much blood she'd already lost, was quite an achievement. "That's not good," she said, which struck me as the understatement of the galactic cycle. "What did you do?" I asked, my voice climbing several octaves. "Please tell me you didn't break into someone's private quarters or steal classified data or assassinate a diplomat or something equally stupid." "I didn't assassinate anyone," she said, which wasn't nearly as reassuring as it should have been because it didn't address the other possibilities. The sound of boots was getting closer, accompanied by voices shouting orders in galactic standard. I could make out words like lockdown and priority target and shoot to kill, which were not the kinds of phrases you wanted to hear echoing through your workplace. "We need to move," Maya said, and suddenly she wasn't the injured, helpless human I'd been patching up. There was authority in her voice now, the kind of command presence that made you want to follow orders even when you didn't know what those orders were. "We?" I squeaked. "There is no we in this situation. I'm a maintenance drone. I fix things. I don't get involved in whatever Black Ops military nonsense you've gotten yourself mixed up in." She looked at me with those green eyes, and I saw something flicker across her face. It might have been disappointment, or maybe just resignation. "You're right," she said quietly. "I'm sorry I got you involved. Thank you for the medical attention. I'll find my own way out." She started to walk away, moving with that careful, controlled gait of someone who was fighting off pain and exhaustion. And that's when I made the stupidest decision of my long, previously sensible life. "Wait," I called after her. She turned back, eyebrow raised. "The service tunnels," I said, my 4 stomachs doing backflips as I realized what I was about to do. "I know every maintenance shaft, every access tunnel, every forgotten crawl space in this station, if you need to get somewhere without being seen." A smile spread across her face, and for a moment she didn't look like a dangerous fugitive or a mysterious operative. She just looked like someone who was grateful not to be alone. "Lead the way," she said, and that's how I, Vex 291, professional fixer of broken things and minder of my own business, became an accessory to, well, I still wasn't sure what, exactly. But as I led her into the maze of maintenance tunnels that honeycombed the station, I had the distinct feeling that my nice, quiet, predictable life was about to become significantly more complicated. The tunnels were dark, cramped, and filled with the constant hum of machinery. Perfect for hiding, terrible for conversation. We crawled through spaces barely wide enough for my frame, Maya following behind with surprising grace for someone who'd been bleeding out 20 minutes ago. "Where are we going?" she asked as we paused at a junction between the waste recycling system and the atmospheric processors. "Cargo Bay 12, I replied, checking my internal navigation system. "It's scheduled for decontamination today, so it'll be empty. You can figure out your next move from there. You know this place really well." 15 cycles I've been crawling through these tunnels," I said, leading her down a particularly narrow passage that ran alongside the main power conduits. "You learn every rivet and bolt when it's your job to keep them all working." We emerged into Cargo Bay 12 through a maintenance hatch in the floor. The bay was indeed empty, just rows of cargo containers and loading equipment sitting silent in the dim lighting. Maya stretched, working out the kinks from our crawl through the tunnels. "Thank you," she said again. "I know this isn't what you signed up for when you came to work today." "Lady, nothing about today has been what I signed up for," I replied, sealing the hatch behind us, starting with finding a bleeding human in my corridor and ending with playing tour guide through the station's intestines. She was quiet for a moment, looking around the cargo bay with those calculating green eyes. "You could have just left me there," she said finally. "Most people would have." "Yeah, well, most people aren't idiots like me, or maybe most people aren't as decent as you." I felt my face plates flush, which was embarrassing. Compliments from humans always made me uncomfortable, probably because they seemed so genuine when they gave them. "So what now?" I asked, eager to change the subject. "You hole up here until the heat dies down?" Maya shook her head. "I need to get to the command level. There's someone I need to speak with." "The command level?" I stared at her in disbelief. "Are you completely insane? That's where all the big shots hang out. Security's tighter than a vacuum seal up there." "I know." She said it with that same quiet confidence that had been bothering me since I first found her. "But it's where I need to be." "Why?" The question popped out before I could stop it. "Who are you really, Maya Torres? And don't give me any more wrong place, wrong time nonsense. People don't get hunted by station security for jaywalking." She looked at me for a long moment, and I could see her weighing her options: trust the maintenance drone or keep her secrets. The smart money was on keeping her secrets. "I'm someone who made a lot of enemies today," she said finally. "Someone who discovered something that certain people didn't want discovered." "What kind of something?" "The kind that gets people killed for knowing about it." Well, that was ominous, and also explained why she looked like she'd been through a plasma grinder. "Look," I said, "my survival instincts finally kicking in. Maybe it's time for me to get back to my regularly scheduled life of fixing broken things and avoiding trouble. This sounds like the kind of situation that ends with me being spaced out an airlock." Maya nodded, but I could see disappointment flicker across her face again. "I understand. You've already done more than enough, and that's when I made my second stupid decision of the day. The command level has maintenance access, I heard myself saying, if you really need to get up there. Her face lit up like a small sun. Really? You'd do that? I'm apparently having some kind of mental breakdown, I muttered, because this is the worst idea I've ever had. And I once tried to repair a fusion reactor while it was still running. What changed your mind? I looked at her standing there in her torn clothes, still pale from blood loss but with that unwavering determination in her eyes, and I realized I didn't have a good answer. Maybe it was because she'd thanked me like she meant it. Maybe it was because she'd laughed at my jokes even while she was dying. Or maybe it was just because she was alone and scared and trying very hard not to show it. I'm probably going to regret this, I said, moving toward another maintenance hatch, but nobody deserves to face their problems alone. Even humans. She smiled at that, and for some reason it made all the stupidity worth it. Besides, I added, opening the hatch, my shift doesn't end for another 6 hours. Might as well spend it doing something more interesting than cleaning plasma conduits. As we climbed into the maintenance shaft that would take us toward the command level, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to learn exactly who Maya Torres really was. And somehow I suspected that when I did, my quiet little life as a maintenance drone was going to be over forever. But hey, at least it wouldn't be boring. The maintenance shaft leading to the command level was like climbing through the digestive system of a very large, very mechanical beast. Every few meters, we had to navigate around junction boxes, power couplings, and what I'm pretty sure was a decades-old sandwich that some previous maintenance worker had forgotten. The smell alone could have been classified as a biological weapon. How much further? Maya whispered behind me, her voice barely audible over the hum of the life support systems. Another 100 meters, I replied, pausing to check my internal map. But here's where things get tricky. The command level has motion sensors in all the maintenance areas. Apparently, someone up there is paranoid about people like us crawling around in their walls. Can you disable them? I turned to look at her, which was awkward in the cramped space. Lady, I'm maintenance, not a master thief. I know how to fix sensors when they break, not how to break them when they're working. She was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she reached into what remained of her jacket and pulled out a small device that looked like it had been designed by someone with way too much time and way too much intelligence. What about this? She asked, holding up the gadget. I stared at it. The thing was clearly military grade, probably worth more than I made in a cycle, and definitely not something your average bleeding human should have been carrying around. Where did you get that? I asked suspiciously. Found it, she said, which was obviously another lie bigger than the last one. Right. And I suppose you also found the knowledge of how to use it? She shrugged. I'm a quick learner. The device turned out to be some kind of sensor scrambler, and Maya operated it like she'd been born with the thing in her hands. Within minutes, she'd mapped the entire sensor network ahead of us and created what she called a blind corridor that we could move through undetected. Impressive, I admitted grudgingly. For someone who found that gadget. I have many hidden talents, she replied with a grin that was becoming familiar. We made our way through the scrambled sensor field, emerging finally into a service corridor just below the command level proper. The difference in atmosphere was immediate. Down in maintenance, everything was functional but shabby. Up here, even the service areas had that polished, expensive look that screamed important people work here. Okay, I said, checking the corridor in both directions. We're here. Now what? Now I need to get to Admiral Kane's office. I nearly fell over. Admiral Kane? As in Fleet Admiral Helena Kane? The woman who could have me recycled into furniture polish with a single word. That's the one. Are you completely insane? You can't just walk into the Fleet Admiral's office. She's got more security around her than the Galactic Treasury. Maya's expression grew serious. She's also got a traitor on her staff who's been selling military secrets to the consortium, secrets that are going to get a lot of good people killed if someone doesn't warn her. The pieces started clicking together in my head, and I didn't like the picture they were forming. Your intelligence, I said. It wasn't a question, she corrected. Past tense. As of about 4 hours ago, I'm officially dead. What? Someone leaked my identity to the consortium. They sent a kill team after me. I barely escaped, and now everyone thinks I died in the explosion at my safe house. I felt all 4 of my stomachs drop into my lower abdomen. And you want to walk into the most secure area of the station to warn the fleet admiral about a traitor who already thinks you're dead. Pretty much, yeah. This is the worst plan in the history of bad plans, I said. This makes my idea about repairing a live fusion reactor look like a stroke of genius. Do you have a better suggestion? I thought about it. I really did. But the truth was, if Maya was right about a traitor selling secrets that would get people killed, then someone had to warn the Admiral. And if Maya was supposed to be dead, she was probably the only one who could do it. The Admiral's office has a private entrance through the executive maintenance bay, I said finally. It's for emergency evacuations, but it bypasses most of the security checkpoints. Can you get us there? I can get us to the bay. What happens after that is up to you. We made our way through a maze of corridors that grew progressively more luxurious as we climbed. The walls were lined with rare metals, the lighting was warm and pleasant, and everything smelled like expensive cleaning products instead of recycled air and desperation. The executive maintenance bay was a far cry from the cluttered service areas I was used to. Everything was organized, labeled, and probably worth more than my entire annual salary. Even the tool racks looked like they'd been designed by artists. There, I said, pointing to a discreet panel near the back wall that leads directly to the Admiral's private office. But it's locked with both electronic and biometric security. Maya examined the panel, running her fingers along its edges. The electronic lock isn't a problem, she said, pulling out another gadget from her seemingly endless supply. But the biometric scanner, yeah, that's going to be tricky unless you happen to have the Admiral's fingerprints handy. Maya looked at me with that expression I was learning to dread. The one that meant she was about to ask me to do something that would probably get us both killed. Actually, she said slowly, I was hoping you might know another way. Such as, you said this was for emergency evacuations. There has to be a manual override, right? Something maintenance can access if the electronic systems fail? I stared at her. You want me to trigger an emergency override? Do you have any idea what that would do? Every alarm on the station would go off. Security would be here in seconds. How long would it take you to override the lock? Maybe 30 seconds, but... And how long to get from here to the Admiral's office? I calculated quickly. Another 30 seconds, maybe 40. Then we'd have over a minute before security arrived. That should be enough. That should be enough. Enough for what? To get ourselves arrested? To start an intergalactic incident? To ruin what's left of my career? Maya stepped closer, and those green eyes locked onto mine. "For enough to save lives," she said quietly. "X, the information that Trader is selling, it's not just military secrets. It's civilian evacuation routes, colony defense grids, supply lines. If the consortium gets their hands on it, millions of innocent people are going to die." The weight of what she was saying hit me like a cargo hauler. This wasn't just about catching a spy or preventing some abstract military disaster. This was about real people, real families, real lives. "You're sure about this?" I asked. "I'm sure." I looked at the emergency override panel, then back at Maya. She was injured, exhausted, officially dead, and asking me to help her commit what amounted to breaking and entering against the most powerful person in the sector. It was crazy. It was dangerous. It was probably going to get us both killed. It was also the right thing to do. "All right," I said, moving toward the override panel, "but when we're both sitting in prison cells, I'm blaming you for everything." "Fair enough." I activated the override, and immediately every alarm in the sector started screaming. Emergency lights flashed, blast doors began sealing, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear security teams mobilizing. The biometric lock disengaged with a soft click. "Go!" I shouted over the alarms. We rushed through the opening into what was hands down the most luxurious office I'd ever seen. The walls were lined with real wood paneling. The furniture looked like it belonged in a museum, and the view screen showed a panoramic view of the nebula that made the station's location so strategically important. Fleet Admiral Helena Kane was standing behind her desk, her hand moving toward what was probably a very large weapon. She was smaller than I'd expected, but there was something about her presence that filled the room. This was a woman who'd commanded fleets, made decisions that affected entire worlds, and probably hadn't gotten where she was by being nice to uninvited guests. "Stand down," she barked, her voice carrying the kind of authority that made you want to obey even when you knew you were in the right. "Admiral Kane," Maya said, raising her hands but not backing down. "My name is Maya Torres. I'm Intelligence Division, Clearance Level 9. I have information about a security breach in your command structure." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "Maya Torres died 4 hours ago in a consortium attack. So either you're a very good actress, or you're about to tell me something very interesting." "The attack was a setup," Maya said quickly. "Someone in your command structure leaked my identity and location to the consortium. They wanted me dead because I discovered they've been selling classified information." "Prove it." Maya reached slowly into her jacket and pulled out a datapad. "Everything's on here. Financial records, communication logs, even the original intelligence reports that were sold. Your Deputy Chief of Staff, Commander Brooks, has been in the consortium's pocket for over a year." The Admiral took the datapad, her face growing darker as she scrolled through the information. "These are classified files," she said. "How did you access them?" "I've been tracking the security breach for months. Brooks has been careful, but not careful enough. The financial trails led back to a consortium shell company, and the timing of the intelligence leaks matches his access to the classified briefings." Admiral Kane continued reading, her expression growing grimmer by the second. "If this is accurate," she began. "It is," Maya said firmly. "And there's more. The consortium is planning a major offensive in the Kepler sector. They've got detailed information about our defense grids, evacuation protocols, everything they need to maximize civilian casualties." The Admiral looked up from the datapad. "When?" "When? 72 hours. Yes." The room fell silent, except for the continuing wail of the alarms. Admiral Kane studied Maya for a long moment, and I could practically see the calculations happening behind her eyes. Trust the dead intelligence operative, or assume this was some elaborate deception. "Computer," the Admiral said finally, "and cancel emergency protocols. Authorization Kane 77 Alpha." The alarm stopped, leaving my ears ringing in the sudden quiet. "Agent Torres," the Admiral continued, "if what you're telling me is true, then we have a very serious problem. If you're lying," she let the threat hang in the air. "I'm not lying," Maya said. "But I am officially dead, which means I can't exactly walk into Intelligence Command and file a report. And Brooks will know something's wrong if I suddenly resurface. What do you suggest? Let me stay dead. Use the information I've given you to set a trap. Brooks doesn't know what I discovered, just that I was getting close. If you feed him false information about your response to the consortium threat, he'll pass it along. That'll give you confirmation and evidence." The Admiral nodded slowly. "It could work, but it would mean you'd have to remain in hiding until we can resolve this situation." "I understand." Admiral Kane turned her attention to me, and I suddenly felt like a very small bug under a very large magnifying glass. "And you are?" "Vex 291, Maintenance Division," I squeaked. I was just. "He saved my life," Maya said quickly. "Found me bleeding in a service corridor and patched me up. Then helped me get here when he could have just minded his own business." The Admiral studied me with those sharp, calculating eyes. "Why?" she asked. It was a simple question, but somehow it felt like the most important one I'd ever been asked. Why had I helped her? Why had I risked my job, my safety, my comfortable little life to aid a stranger? "Because it was the right thing to do," I said finally. "And because someone has to look out for the little people, even if they're not so little." Something shifted in the Admiral's expression. It might have been approval, or maybe just surprise that a maintenance drone had opinions about right and wrong. Vex 291, she said. You're being reassigned. My heart's all stopped beating at the same time. Ma am? Ead. Effective immediately. You're attached to Intelligence Division as a technical specialist. Agent Torres is going to need support while she remains officially deceased, and someone with your knowledge of station systems could be invaluable. I stared at her. Then at Maya, who was grinning like she'd just won the galactic lottery. Then back at the Admiral. But I'm just maintenance, I protested weakly. Not anymore, Admiral Kane said with something that might have been a smile. Congratulations on your promotion, Agent Vex 291. And that's how a simple maintenance drone who just wanted to fix things and avoid trouble, became a galactic intelligence operative. It turned out that Maya Torres wasn't just the most powerful woman in the galaxy, she was also the most dangerous. Dangerous enough that someone had tried to kill her, and dangerous enough that even officially dead, she was still fighting to save lives. The consortium threat was neutralized within the week. Commander Brooks was arrested trying to flee to consortium space with a cargo hold full of classified data. The planned offensive never materialized, and millions of civilians never knew how close they'd come to disaster. Maya remained officially dead for another month while intelligence cleaned up the rest of Brooks' network. When she finally resurfaced, it was with the promotion to Senior Intelligence Director and a commendation for exceptional service. As for me, well, it turns out that intelligence work isn't all that different from maintenance. You still spend most of your time fixing problems that other people created. The only difference is that now when things break, entire star systems might be at stake instead of just the air recycling. But I've got to admit, it's never boring. And Maya was right about one thing. Nobody should have to face their problems alone. Even humans. Especially humans, actually. Because they have this annoying habit of taking on problems way too big for any reasonable person to handle. Lucky for the galaxy, they also have this equally annoying habit of succeeding anyway.